Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are excited to have everybody here for our second clinic in Echo Autism and Applied Behavior Analysis. Echo Autism is a collaboration with the University of New Mexico as well as the University of Missouri, and we are a pilot project that is funded through Autism Speaks and Behavior Change Institute. So this morning, what I will do is actually give you a brief overview of what you can expect from the clinic this morning, and then we will move on to a brief round of introductions. So today we have two case presentations. We do have a new case that will be presented by Kari Hoskins this morning, and then we will be following up with the case that we had started last week with Sarah Brunslick and finishing up the recommendations that we were unable to get to during our last clinic. In addition, we have Dr. Lambert, who will be joining us for the didactic later this morning, and he will be presenting on latency-based FAs, and we are excited to have him join us as well. So first, we will go ahead and begin with introductions from our hub panelists. If we could just briefly state our name, our credentials, and where we are located, that would be wonderful. I will start. My name is Joy Pollard. I'm a doctoral level behavior analyst, and I live in Oakland, California. Haley is our clinic coordinator, and she is joining locally as well. So Haley, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Haley, and I will be in the chat box, and if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me.
So anything you need, Haley will be available to help you. Okay, we will also now move on and introduce our hub panelists. And let's go ahead and first start with Sarah Baca.
Alrighty, I'm Sarah Baca, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Mexico Autism Society, as well as a parent to Preston, who happens to have autism, and I am in Rio Rancho, New Mexico.
Excellent, thank you. Tina?
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Tina Golteth. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a doctoral level board certified behavior analyst, and I serve as the Director of Training for Trumpet Behavioral Health, and I am joining from Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Great, thank you. And Kathleen?
Hi everyone, I'm Kathleen. I'm a healthcare administrator. I live in Oakland, California, and I am tuning in from abroad today, so please excuse the no video. I'm very excited to be here.
Great, thank you. And we do have one more panelist, Zoe Miguel, our licensed independent social worker. She should be joining us shortly, so when she does log on, we will go ahead and introduce her. In addition, we do have one other panelist, Dr. Kristen Stoll. She's a developmental pediatrician from the University of Missouri, and she will not be able to join us today, but she will be joining us later in March for our ECHO clinic starting then. All right, so we are going to go through and briefly introduce everybody that's joining us in the audience today. I will go ahead and unmute you and call out your name, and if you could briefly introduce yourself, that would be wonderful. Okay, Arlette?
Hi everybody, my name is Arlette Buchanda, and I am a BCABA, and I am with Behavior Change Institute, and I am located in El Paso, Texas.
Excellent, thank you. Kathy?
Hey, I'm Kathy Gomez. I'm a BCBA, just joining the team, and I am coming from Fresno, California.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathy. Welcome. Dr. Mansell?
Hey, yes, I'm Dr. Mansell, Rich Mansell. I'm the Behavior Analysis Program Chair and Director for the Autism and Behavior Analysis Research Institute in Louisiana, at Louisiana Tech, but I am currently making plans to move to southern New Mexico.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us again. Sarah.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah. Excuse me. I am with BCI, and I am a BCBA intern, and I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Thank you, Sarah. And we have Fran.
Hi everyone, my name is Fran. I am a BCBA in Long Island, New York, and I'm going to keep my video off just because of this one.
Okay. Well, welcome, Fran. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, Jolie.
Hi everyone, I'm Jolie. I work at BCI as an RBT, and I'm also a BCBA intern, and I live in Washington State.
Thank you. Kari, who will be presenting today.
My name is Kari Hoskins. I am a BCBA,
and I am in Lubbock, Texas.
Thank you. Carla?
Hi everyone, I'm Carla Durag. I am with BCI as an RBT here in El Paso, Texas.
Excellent. Thank you, Carla. Kate McClelland?
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm an RBT in Roswell, New Mexico with BCI, and I'm currently a BCBA intern with BCI.
Thank you, Kate. Kelly Weingart?
Hi there, I'm Kelly Weingart, and I'm the Talent and Acquisition Specialist for Behavior Change Institute, and I'm in Oakland, California.
Thank you. Kyle?
BCBA intern RBT here in for BCI in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Excellent. Thank you. And Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Weingart. I'm Behavior Change Institute's Strategic Support Manager. I'm essentially a project manager with a focus on initiatives that support staff in the field, and I'm located in Evansville, Indiana.
Thank you. Liz?
Hi everyone, I am Liz Sepulveda. I am a registered behavior technician with Behavior Change Institute. I'm also a BCBA intern here in El Paso, Texas.
Thank you. Megan Griffin?
Hi everyone, I'm a doctoral level behavior analyst and I coordinate and I'm a faculty member in UNM's approved course sequence in ABA.
Wonderful. Thank you, Megan, for joining us today. Michelle?
Hi everyone, I am a doctoral level board certified behavior analyst and an independent contractor, currently contracting with BCI, also providing parent education, and I'm located in the San Francisco Bay Area of California.
Hey, thank you, Michelle. Lovely to see you. Monica?
Hello, my name is Monica Mejia. I am a BCBA working for BCI, and I am currently in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Thank you, Monica. And I see we have Natalie joining from her iPhone. Natalie. Okay. Natalie, if you have an opportunity, please feel free to chat in and say hello if your audio is not working. Nicholas.
Hello, everybody. Excuse me. Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Orland. I'm a BCBA. I work at the Behavior Change Institute, and I live in Lenox, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Nina?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina. I work out of the Oakland office here, and I am the finance director.
Thank you. And we have Rebecca Kelly. Hi, Rebecca. You are unmuted if you would like to introduce yourself. Okay, Rebecca, if you have an opportunity and would like to come back, please chat in and we will introduce you here in a bit. Sarah Brunslick.
Hi, I'm Sarah Brunslick. I'm a BCBA with BCI, and I currently live in northern Wisconsin.
Great, thank you. And Susan Copeland.
Hi, I'm Susan Copeland. I'm a professor in special education at the University of New Mexico and a doctoral level BCBA, and I work with Megan Griffin in the ABA certificate program.
Excellent. So glad to see you here today. And we have, and I apologize, is it Tai Tao? How would I pronounce your name?
Hi, everyone. My name is Taiwo Fowowe. I'm working towards my BCBA. I'm actually going to do my exam in a few weeks' time.
Excellent. Well, welcome. We're very happy to have you here today. Trisha Joy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Trisha Joy. I am an RBT BCI in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and I'm also a BCBA intern.
Excellent. Thank you. And it looks like our other panelist that I was mentioning earlier has joined us. Zoe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Zoe Miguel. I'm the Executive Director of Bright Futures, Early Intervention, Autism and Early Intervention here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and very pleased to be part of this process. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to today's clinic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Zoe. And I see we have somebody joining over the phone. Would you like to introduce yourself today?
Hi,
I'm Katie Lask. I'm a BCBA out of St. Louis, Missouri, and I work for the Center for Autism Education.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, Katie. It's great to see you. If we had anybody else that joined us throughout the introductions, please feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself as well. I see we have somebody new that joined us. Daniel? Okay, well, if anybody would like to unmute themselves and introduce themselves, please feel free to do so now, or you can do so in the chat box, which we leave open for everybody to be able to ask questions, provide comments, and to share information within the chat box as well. Okay, so without further ado, we will go ahead and start with our first case presentation. We have Kari that will be presenting today, and as a reminder, Echo Clinics are, we do not present any identifying patient information over video with the Echo Clinic, so they are HIPAA compliant, so if we can ensure that we do not share information that might be identifying, that would be great. And Kari will start off with a brief overview of her case, which all of you do have access to. It was presented in the link that was shared via email. And following her case presentation, we will then follow up with clarifying questions. So Kari, I will go ahead and unmute you so that you can go ahead and start.
Okay, let me get into our document. So I have a client. He is 6 in kindergarten. He communicates, but it's hard to understand what he says. He's not, unlike his parents will understand his communication. And so the reason I was, oh, there we are, thank you. I was going into my own little thing. So we've had some barriers. Family separated in April of 2015. And then he starts school in kindergarten. And we implemented a leveling stoplight system that helped decrease elopement and decrease the duration of his tantrums, but it has not decreased the non-compliance and the frequency of tantrums. In January, Dad's girlfriend had a baby, and we were afraid that some of those challenging behaviors would increase, but they have not. We provided some parent training and some coaching on how to handle a new baby. We did some social stories, and that seemed to be effective. He attends a self-contained autism classroom. He has lots of challenging behaviors in that classroom. I was able to observe once. During the observation for an hour, he was just on the iPad the entire time. I tried to develop a relationship with the school, but the director of special education doesn't feel like it would be beneficial that I can have a communicative email, phone call relationship with the principal, but that's the extent of our involvement. Haley, you can go on. He's receiving speech and OT and PT. I think he has a social worker. We are teaching some replacement behaviors because it seems his challenging behaviors are mostly for escape and or denied access to a tangible. So we taught him more time, and he mastered that and is able to generalize it. We are also teaching manding for help, manding for break, manding all done, and those are in progress. Parents are bilingual. Okay, you can go on, Ms. Haley. And he is receiving 12 hours of ABA a week, 2 hours every night, Monday through Friday, and a 2-hour session on Saturday. Our therapy alternates between mom and dad, and we often think we're going to be at dad's house, and the BTs will get a text saying, oh no, it's going to be at mom's house. So there's not that consistency there. And I think I've covered everything. His language, like I said, is very minimal. We have lot of co-ed programs that he's mastered and is shaping up nicely. Matter of fact, my last visit, Dad said for me to stop because he's getting so verbal and starting to tell Dad, no, I don't want to. And so it was a joke that he's like, he's talking too much. So that was nice to hear. But he's a great kid. Family really cares. They love that we're getting therapy. I would just like some help and advice because, like I said, the stoplight system decreased. Can we go to our graphs, Haley? Keep going, sweetie. So those are my manding for break and please, and you can see there's lots of variability. You know, one day he's doing it perfectly, and the next day he will need prompt assistance. For break, please, we do have a break card as a visual prompt, but he doesn't consistently use it. We'll have to point to it. Most of our challenging behaviors are at table time when we're presenting demands. Okay, keep going. No, other way, yeah. And then you can see the demanding for more time, the delayed termination. He quickly mastered that. And you can see in that last data point that he's able to maintain it and that he's generalizing across his environment. Okay, keep going. So you can see my tantrums that the stop where that event line is when we implemented the stoplight system. And so we just have some inconsistency. He'll do really well for about a month or so, and then we'll have some tantrums. You can see how it was very effective in decreasing the duration of the tantrum, because before the system, we were having 20, 30-minute tantrums, and now our tantrums, I think our longest one is maybe 2 minutes. Okay, keep one more. But then you can see how it didn't affect the non-compliance whatsoever, but it did decrease our elopement to a 0 occurrence, which was fantastic because prior to the stoplight system, he was eloping and elopement would last, I didn't do the duration graph in this presentation, but you can see in a 2-hour session, he would have up to 5 elopements, and an elopement could last 30 to 45 minutes. So we were really pleased with that results. I keep going. I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Kari. So I will go ahead and briefly summarize the main areas of concern, and then we will go into clarifying questions from the audience. So in summary, we have a 6-year-old boy diagnosed with autism. He's been receiving approximately 10 to 12 hours a week of ABA therapy in the home for the last year. Today, you are presenting based on a primary area of concern related to challenging behavior. With some of the intervention plans that have been implemented, you have seen success and are specifically requesting assistance with non-compliance in the home during sessions. In addition, we have some barriers to treatment and environmental variables that might be affecting our ability to coordinate care and outcomes. Specifically, we have not been able to coordinate care in the school environment, which has been an area that the parents have presented an area of concern as well. And also the parents have divorced. They are currently living in 2 different locations, and so sometimes it's unknown where therapy is going to be implemented as well. And so with these variables, I think that we will first move on to clarifying questions from the audience that are related to the treatment barriers and the care coordination, because that's the overarching goal of the ECHO Autism Clinic here. Then we will circle back and then go into the questions related to the challenging behavior. But first, did I summarize briefly the overall case, and did I hit everything? Okay, perfect. So we will move into the audience questions. We have about 5 minutes, and anybody that has questions related to care coordination, treatment barriers, or other variables that might be affecting the outcomes, then now would be the time to go ahead and present those questions. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions as well.
Hi, Kari. It's Sarah Brunslick. Oops,
Hi,
sorry, I'm getting a
Sarah.
lot of feedback. There we go. I just had questions about his reinforcement schedule. What are his reinforcers? How are they assessed? How regularly are they assessed? Something like that that would shed some light on
Absolutely, that's a great
helping
question.
with escape.
He satiates easily. About a year ago, I did complete a MSWO on edibles, but that, you know, he has free access to those edibles outside of session. So a lot of times at table time, we would say, "Great job! I like how you did whatever. Here's your chip," and he would tell us no. So then we did a MSWO for some toys. Again, he satiates quickly. He's on a VR3 at table time, and then a VI 2-minute of where the BTs will say, "Great job, I like how you're listening to teacher," or whatever, "You're still on green," just to do as an antecedent strategy to celebrate that he stays on green during table time. So we're constantly, matter of fact, this morning I just did treatment planning where I'm planning like his break times, alternating those toys, trying not to satiate, and then alternating his access to reinforcers at table, like maybe have a Monday baggie of different choices and a Tuesday baggie, so to help with satiation.
Excellent question. Does anybody else in the audience have questions?
Hi, Kari. This is Darlet Bujando in El Paso. My question kind of extends a little bit on Sarah's question. What is the reinforcement system for the system that you were using, the light color system? How is that different from the system that you mentioned just now?
So at table, for the whole session, he has the stoplight session. If he stays on green for 80% or higher of the entire session, he has access to his iPad for 10 minutes at the end of session. At table time, we do have a token system to let him know when, and that's that VR3. So on a VR3, he gets that token. After 5 tokens, he knows that table is done and he's allowed to escape table. You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from the audience? All right. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box. One component of ECHO is that the case-based learning process, the question piece of the case-based learning process is actually just as important as the recommendations. And so being able to identify the questions that other folks are asking and the rationale behind them is a great learning experience in of itself. So what we are going to do is move on to our panelists and ask for clarifying questions from our panelist members. So Zoe, we will be starting with you today, and please feel free to go ahead.
Great. So wonderful presentation, first and foremost. It sounds like you're doing some wonderful work. And also in a situation that's challenging, right? So the family has just split up. How long have they been separated? Are they divorced, I guess is the...
No.
Are they... Okay.
They don't have the financial means to legally get divorced, but Dad moved out in April. And I did, there was a lot of anger going on, so I reached out to the insurance carrier and to the case manager, and they did assign a nurse case manager, and she came to this home, provided home session, has tried to reach out to the family, but the family is non-responsive. So.
And are mom and dad, is their relationship still difficult? Are they able to communicate and be on the same page with their boy?
Yes. I go to the home once a month to do parent training, and they will parent train together, and Dad's girlfriend has even joined us.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So I'm asking these to just kind of get a sense of what those environments may look like for this little boy in terms of how well his parents are collaborating, co-parenting, and what might be some environmental stressors, both for him, but also for the parents in terms of their ability to support his learning, particularly around things like scheduling, right? I hear that scheduling is such a challenge.
Yeah.
And I
had to go to work full time after the divorce. So that's why we go back and forth between the homes. The girlfriend would sometime watch him during our therapy because dad works evenings, but since she's had the baby, she's not been available. So that's caused a lot more variability of where we're going. There's a lot of communication about the stresses in their family in front of the child. They've communicate, like when I've gone for home visits with just me and mom, mom will share things and the child's in the room. And so, and with him not being able to have the verbal repertoire to really communicate how he's feeling and things, I think he's expressing that through his challenging behaviors. And their biggest concern right now is his school environment.
I think that's a great observation that he is sort of responding emotionally, even though he doesn't have the language. Do you feel like you can have a conversation with the family about, maybe finding a time, engaging him in some play, or finding some time that you can be present, but not necessarily in front of him? Is that something that you would feel comfortable doing?
Yeah, it's hard because he's the only child and he very much wants the attention. And so for us to go, and there's a very small 1-bedroom apartments, so there's not a lot of space. So like for us to go into her bedroom, he would follow us. He won't stay in a room by him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I could absolutely maybe do that during a session when the BT's with him. That's a great idea.
Joy, just to kind of stay on track, I'll move to suggestions later, right? That's kind of the process. Okay.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit and ask some questions around the school environment, because that sounds like that's a shared challenge or concern both for your team as well as for the family. Yes? And so it sounds like you have gotten very clear feedback from the school that they are not interested in collaborating. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is there anything so one of the ways that the family has power in terms of what happens in the school environment is through that IEP. And so if the family, so I'm wondering if they have looked into or had a meeting with the school around possibly putting some accommodations or some pieces in there that kind of encourage them to collaborate, or at least address some of the concerns the family has. Has that been something?
Yes, about a month ago, we printed off, I made a stoplight for her to take to school, printed off our behavior plan and gave it to the school, and the school took it and was very appreciative. And the one time I was able to get into the classroom, the principal shared that she was very grateful, but they had that for probably a month, and when I observed, it was not being implemented. So, and I don't know if it was written in the behavior plan or not for the IEP. I did give the parents some contact information for like parents reaching out. But I don't know if they'll reach out. Right now she's talking about changing school districts.
Okay, so she's pretty frustrated.
Yes, ma'am.
Pretty frustrated. Have they had an IEP to discuss this with a formal IEP to discuss this with the school?
Yes, ma'am. I just don't think the education is there for them to, I've tried to coach them what kind of, because I used to be, in my previous life, I was a special education teacher. So I've tried to coach them. They're very much out of compliance. And, but it's just, the parents just don't know
how to
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, because the special education teacher will send a note home, and on the note it will say, child hit teacher 7 times and no ABC data. So I've even given her copies of ABC data sheets to take to the school, and she will. That was my big, when I went to go visit, that was the main thing I asked the school, because the school is frustrated, right? Because they have this child who's, and I said, you know, I tried to approach it where we're not trying to tell the school what to do, but we need more information so we can support at home. So if we go to the child and say, okay, you hit the teacher 7 times today, he's going to tell mom, well, he hit me first, you know, and so we don't have that information to even, you know, address it at home. And so the principals seem to understand that, but we have not seen the improvement in the notes yet.
Are you all in New Mexico?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for that information. That's great.
Thank you, Zoe. Let's go ahead and move on to Sarah Baca.
Alrighty. So what is their primary language?
They're bilingual, but they speak, mom speaks English to the child, dad sometimes speaks Spanish.
Oh, okay. And then you already answered the question about the parents being on the same page as far as, and I meant to say hello, Carrie. Good to see you.
I know. I haven't seen your phone.
I know. Sorry, that's what I meant to start off with. Okay, yeah. Well, that's interesting to me that if they're all on the same page, you know, it could be just a huge disruption. I saw a baby sister was born too at the beginning of the year, and if he's full of, you know, used to all the attention, just wondering how that's affecting him.
It's funny because we really thought, because he is used to that attention, that there would be an increase, but he loves the baby. He's very protective of the baby. If the baby cries, he cries.
Oh.
We even noticed in therapy session, we put some cards out, and it was of emotions, and one of the cards was of a baby crying, and he saw that card and started crying. And so he's very protective of his little sister.
And the parents are all open to suggestions from the therapist? Yeah.
They are. They are. Not always follows through. But, you know, like I suggested stories about becoming a big brother. Mom went to Hastings and bought a bunch of books for us to read to him to prepare for the baby. And
that's good. I think that that's important, and you guys are doing an amazing job of helping them, you know, send stuff to the school and things like that. I know school districts are kind of hard. Even my son's school this last week, I said, I'm sending the teacher articles. He's like, well, be careful how many you send her because she's going to stop reading them. I'm like, no, I'm going to keep sending them. Don't tell me to stop. So, yeah. But all right, well, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Kathleen.
Hi, Kari. It's Kathleen from Oakland, California. And I have one brief question. Are you able to share the funding source?
The insurance, Medicaid.
Yes. Okay. And do you happen to know if the parents are also covered under a New Mexico Medicaid plan?
I think so.
Super. And then I have one question briefly for one of our hub panelists. Zoe, I'm wondering, do you know if the role of the care coordinators under the New Mexico Medicaid program, would it also be appropriate for them to facilitate family-oriented care?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the care coordinators, in my experience, have varied expertise in terms of what families need, what is available, how to help families access it. So it's hit and miss as to how helpful those care coordinator or patient advocates are. You know, I think Sarah Baca, one of the other panelists, might be a great resource just in terms of, or maybe the team who's already there, in terms of some specific people in the community that might be able to help, and then the care coordinator could make sure that that connection happens. So usually I find it's most effective when it's a collaboration between those who are kind of in the know, those who know the family, and then helping the care coordinator to take the resources from the insurance and help support that way. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. And Kari, great presentation.
Would that be same, because I did contact Medicaid and they did send someone to the home, and like a nurse case manager. I knew her. She used to be a school nurse when I was a teacher. And the parents expressed that they thought there was some ADHD, so she was trying to coordinate a doctor's appointment for him. But like I said, the parents didn't follow through. She even reached out to me because she was afraid that she had the wrong number because phone calls were not being returned. And then next time I spoke with Mom, I brought it up, and she just wasn't interested in the assistance anymore.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. And Tina, do you have any questions related to the treatment barriers and care coordination?
Just a couple of fast questions. One of the notes that I saw in the report was that there had been some university consultation delivered, and I was wondering if that was for the classroom or for this specific child, and if you were privy to any documentation that resulted from that consultation, and if that's been helpful in your conceptualization of the case.
Yes, when I observed there was university support. I don't know if it's still ongoing. The classroom teacher, I don't know why, but shared with me that he had gotten feedback from the university, but that he got in trouble for not implementing the feedback. And his justification was that he didn't receive the feedback in a timely manner, or I wasn't quite sure. I didn't really press it. But you could tell there was animosity between him and the university in their guidelines. Mm-hmm. So this classroom was very much disarrayed. Most children were on laptops, things like that. There wasn't any instruction going on, or it was very discerning. Is that the word I'm looking for? Concerning?
It was concerning, it sounds like, for sure. And do you have documentation of the recommendations that were made from the university providing the consultation?
I do not.
No. Okay. Got it. Great. And then the only other question, which is, it takes us, it's still related to treatment barriers, but bleeds into sort of the second round of questions a bit. It's just regarding the family training. In the case summary, you indicated that you were doing some family training for challenging behaviors and that had been started. And I'm just wondering what's the nature of that family training, and what model of parent training are you using, and how has that been going so far? I think that there was another point you said you're meeting with the family about once a month, and perhaps that's when that occurs.
Mm-hmm. So I do this in the home. Our company has a family PowerPoint presentations for all the different aspects, challenging behaviors, communications. So I did our challenging behavior PowerPoint presentation where we talked about the different functions. We identified the challenging behaviors that they wanted to address. We talked about antecedents and consequences to those challenging behaviors. And we're just now in the point where we're starting to take data and then and trying to determine what kind of system will work for the parents. Like, do they want to incorporate the stoplight system, or would they rather do like a sticker system and then he works towards something? Right now, their parenting is, if you do this, I'll do that. Like a lot of times if we have challenging behaviors in session, Dad will come down and try to help and say, well, if you're good after session, I'll take you to McDonald's. So there's a lot of bribery going on. And so we're trying to change that into more of a, I'll work for this. And so we're now at the stage now with our stoplight system that if he stays on green with us for 4 out of the 5 sessions, on the weekend, he works for something like going to the park or going to Peter Piper. And we just implementing that just to get the parents involved.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I just had a couple really quick questions as well, Kari. So with his therapy sessions, some of the sessions are occurring in the mother's home and some of the sessions are occurring in the father's home. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And when we are providing services in each of those respective settings, is there a difference in his behavior that's observed across those two settings?
No, it's consistent. So
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. No, that's great. And I know that we discussed that there was not too much coordination with the school, but with the challenging behavior that you did mention, that was an area of concern. Are we thinking that the rate or the frequency is similar in what we're observing in the sessions in the home and what the school is observing as well?
I think it's more frequently in the school. The staff reported that he will hit or become aggressive when they're reprimanding another child, and or if they're denying him access to his iPad in the classroom. Whereas we're seeing more of the challenging behaviors for escape. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Are we seeing hitting in the home sessions?
Maybe
No.
2 to 3 times a week. Not enough that it's a concern for me. And when he does, it's just a little small pat, and then he'll rub it and tell you he's sorry. Because with the stoplight system, if he's aggressive, like if he hits or throws, he automatically goes to red. So that decreased that behavior also.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're going to move on into addressing more of the specific areas of concern related to the challenging behavior, but I wanted to make sure that we were able to get the full picture of the potential treatment barriers, because that can just overall affect our ability to monitor the fidelity of implementation as well. And so with that, let's go ahead and move back into the audience. And if you have any additional questions, I know we have some that have come through the chat as well. If you have any additional questions related to the behaviors of concern, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions now. We have about 3 minutes for audience questions.
Can we just read them?
Okay, yes, I am unable to read the questions from here.
Arlette from El Paso was asking, regarding the parent training involvement, are they able to participate in parent training at this point? If so, how often? And are they accessing respite care or interested in that at all?
Okay, so I think that we established that they are participating in parent training at this point, and you said once a month, correct? Okay.
Question from Susan. Are there any counselors or therapist trainers that speak the home language? Sometimes families feel more comfortable using their first language for counseling parenting support, even if they're competent English speakers.
None of our team in this area speaks Spanish. Mom is fluent in English. Like I said, it's only Dad that I see speaking Spanish to the child. But I could reach, I'm sure in the area there has to be some kind of organizations that would provide translators, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure that we will have some recommendations on those as well to connect you with. Okay, so if we don't have any other audience questions, I know we had some questions about the schedule of reinforcement, preference assessments, and we went through a couple of those, but we will go ahead and move on then to our panelist questions. So Tina, what questions do you have related to the challenging behaviors?
Sure. So I'm trying to get a better sense of what the variables are that are influencing the non-compliance at what you're describing as table time or table work. And so I'm assuming that's discrete trial in nature. And what are the targets? And are there particular things that he finds aversive about the nature of the work that he's doing or the context in which he's working?
So, you know, because I had, in the very beginning, I had a lot of verbal programs because I was trying to shape that verbal repertoire. And we noticed a lot of challenging behavior. So we decreased that and went more into the listener responding. But yeah, it very much affects my acquisition data, because we'll say, give me cat, and he'll say no. And so there's your non-compliance. And so we're holding up the token and going, give me cat. And he's like, no. And we're like, oh, and then we're holding up the token and the edible, give me cat, no. So that's very much what the non-compliance is during DDT. We run the master targets to get that behavior momentum, touch, nose, touch, do this. Now give me cat, no. And so we've even shortened our error correction, because we think, well, maybe he's getting bored with the same programs. So, because I only had like 5 or 6 programs in the beginning, and we thought, well, maybe he's getting bored with the same thing. And so then we incorporated more programs, so we're not running the same programs every day. And that seemed to help a little bit, but not enough to affect the rate of the non-compliance. I've even created master target sheets so that my team are not running the same master targets every day. So we're running his master programs alternatively throughout the week, trying to keep that behavior momentum going. And just seems like none of the strategies we've tried have really affected the rate of the non-compliance. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. I'm just trying to ask some questions to get a sense of what some of the motivational factors are here, because I think we've got, as you were responding to somebody else's question about the preference assessment, and as you're talking about the non-compliance, that the elopement has sort of gone down, makes me think a lot about how we can get this kiddo really motivated to learn. And sort of a follow-up question to that would be, do you do a combo of discrete trial and naturalistic teaching, and have you found his compliance in issuing demands in a more naturalistic context, or working on some of those language targets in a more naturalistic way, easier perhaps for the therapist and more motivating for him as a learner?
And I never thought of it that way, but yeah, because we very much focus on shaping his responses and his mands and tacts in the natural environment. So like if he's playing with puzzles, we keep some of the puzzle pieces, and when he first started, puzzle was pubble, and now we just hold that puzzle back, and now he says puzzle, and we don't get the non-compliance like we do at table. So yeah.
Sounds great. I think, yes. And hang on to that thought, because we'll come back to that for the recommendation. So that's great. I think you already got there on your own. And then the last question that I would ask about the DTT is just, you mentioned before you're using a VR3 schedule. I'm wondering if you're using the same schedule of reinforcement for everything that you're doing at the table, or whether you're modifying the schedule of reinforcement based on the specific target and where it's at within instruction.
We started on FR1 and, trying to increase that time at table, and no, it's across everything. So that's an aha moment.
Perfect.
If we see a lot of non-compliance going on, or what my BTs call a rough table, they very much will go down to the FR1 just to get him through it. But it's just my directive is the VR3 across the board.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's super helpful for me to know. And I'll pass it to somebody else for questions. Thank you.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. So what we're going to do is actually just primarily finish up with some of the recommendations that are going to be provided. And as Tina mentioned, you are definitely coming to a lot of the conclusions of where the recommendations are going to be coming from. And we'll be including these all in writing as well. So just to clarify really quickly, though, you did mention that you are seeing more compliance with responding when you're implementing programs in a more naturalistic setting. And then also, do you observe that if you're implementing more self-help or adaptive living skills, such as hand washing or tasks that are throughout the daily routines?
No, parents never wanted ADL skills. I mean, they are just now starting to come on board about getting parent training. In my last visit, they've always told me he can go potty, he can do these things. But when we were in session, we observed that he would not be able to. So we're just now starting ADL programs with parents' permission.
Okay, great. Thank you. And my other question is, you had mentioned previously that you had ran an MSWO last year, and so I was wondering, what is the but that you are frequently modifying and changing out the items.
Just started the modifying and changing out. I just wrote that program last week. So
okay, perfect. And the reason why I'm asking how frequently we're running preference assessments is because we do tend to see those preferences shift, sometimes even within sessions with the children that we're working with as well. Okay, perfect. So we have 10 minutes for recommendations. What I would like to do is, one, encourage you all to chat in any recommendations that you have as well, if we're not able to get to those verbally over video. And let's start with our audience first and see, we have about 2 minutes for audience's recommendations to be provided.
Hi, Kari. It's all right if I give a recommendation now? Yeah? Okay. Just wanted to double check. It sounds like he has good understanding and use of visuals and tokens for earning and understands that contingency really well. And since the parents have been participating on a monthly basis and learning a lot about ABC data and functions for challenging behaviors, I think it would be really helpful for them to start learning the consequences of reinforcement and learning about opened and closed economies, because he had kind of hinted towards edible preferences easily satiated because everything kind of is for free around the house. And I know you and I had talked about this because I just recently had a client where I had to have a discussion with the family about holding more of those rewards contingent upon either earning some type of points for engaging in different household chores or behaviors or skills that we're actually targeting for acquisition and therapy. Yeah, so I've had a lot of success with that, and it's also been very fun, I think, and a change of pace for the client to move around the house and have skills be everywhere, in the bathroom, at the kitchen table, doing a puzzle in the living room. So, yes, I can shoot you more resources regarding that recommendation. But
great. Thank you, Sarah. If you could actually send those to Echo Autism at behaviorchangeinstitute.com, that would be great, so we could include those for everybody to be able to.
Sounds good. Good luck, Kari.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to our panelist recommendations as well. Zoe, let's start with you with recommendations.
I guess the first thing is just to say, there are so many things that you're doing that are so helpful. It sounds like you have reached out to the insurance company, you've really made effort with the school despite not getting a lot of reinforcement for that from them. So all of those are really wonderful. I was wondering just really quickly in terms of the home environment, you had mentioned that he gets 10 minutes iPad at the end of the session. And I was wondering if that might be a time that you could touch base with the family, that he sounds like he's pretty engaged when he's using that iPad. And even though you all might be in the same room, that he might be willing to sort of give up some of that direct attention and sort of tune out on the iPad. So that was one thought that I had. Does that make sense? That might be a good thing to try. And then another piece in terms of the home, sometimes I find that, especially when there's a lot going on, and it sounds like there's a lot going on with this family, just, everything else aside, just scheduling everybody. And so one of the ways in the past that I've helped families with that is to really focus on the child really needs to know what's going on. Right? So maybe putting in some sort of visual schedule for him that one will allow him to know kind of where he's going to be and what's going on and might help him a bit. But it also is often a great sort of tool for the families in a sideways way, instead of saying, you guys need to get a schedule,
Yeah.
you know, to sort of help them be a little bit more mindful about how they schedule and where they need to be. And if they change, you know, to kind of give him a heads up, and that might slow things down or specify a little bit more, so it also isn't so hard for you all to know where you're supposed to be, because I can imagine that that's got to be a little bit hard too for you guys, right?
Yeah.
So that was those were my two recommendations in terms of the home. In terms of the school environment, it does sound like the family really could use some advocacy support. And I'm concerned when a family just says, you know, like, I've had it, can't do it, and we're going to go to another district, because oftentimes they have to start all new with another district, and it's not any better.
Yeah.
And that the family, you know, I think you said it, that the family really needs those skills to be able to negotiate how to get that IEP implemented. And so there are a couple of things, like one, the IEP for the state has certain things that they have to go through. For example, there's 11 considerations at the end of the IEP that goes over, like, does the child need an FBA? Does the child have sufficient, you know, support in the community? Do the parents, is there you know, those kind of things. And so it might be worth going back to the table again. You know, again, Sarah, when you make your recommendations, maybe you can talk about, you know, again, I don't know where exactly this family is, but maybe make some recommendations. I've had kind of hit or miss success with PRO. I don't know often, you know, it's kind of that saying, autism is really its own. I mean, you really have to know autism to be able to advocate well in an IEP situation. I'd be able to help the family. Again, I don't know how much, you know, just in terms of them knowing their rights. A lot of times making the school collect data, right? So, okay, so we've given you this, you know, the stop sign strategy. You know, where's the data, either in a notebook and things like that, and you can require that in the IEP. So by this date, yeah, you can write. I mean, there is so much that you can write in that IEP, you know, in terms of timelines, in terms of requirements, in terms of data work. I mean, all of those things that then the family really begins not only to help the school be more accountable, but also, you know, to begin to build a case. Or if they have to go to mediation, or if they have to go to due process. I mean, it really is serious. If a school is not implementing that IEP, the parent has recourse. So I'd be happy to talk to you at another time if you want. Or maybe again, Sarah has some recommendations of somebody that's more local, you know, when we can talk a little bit more specifically.
I would love
that. It might be, sorry, I'll go quickly. It might be good information to get from the UNM team that went in, so maybe the family would sign a release of information so you could touch base with them. Because I'd be very curious as to whether the school is standoffish with you all because they had a bad experience with UNM. And so that might give you some insight in terms of maybe there's a different approach, or maybe just acknowledging that would help to move that relationship forward. So those are some of my recommendations. I hope that's helpful.
Oh yeah, I want to call you.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
No, that's perfect. So we will include all of those recommendations. Sarah, I see that you have another one, Families ASAP. Sarah, do you have any other recommendations you wanted to include as well?
No. So Families ASAP is a great advocacy organization now that's going into the schools. Parents Reaching Out isn't doing so much in the school systems anymore. So I often refer families to Families ASAP. The other thing that I was going to suggest was, I know that, you know, when you start the ABA process, I've actually never personally had ABA for my son because our insurance company sucks, but do you go in and do you do like a briefing of how ABA applies and what the goals are and things like that for the specific child? Is that done, or?
With the school system?
No, just in the home, like with the parents.
Yeah.
Okay, because sometimes I'm wondering, do they need like a refresher on maybe what need, you know, on the goals and how, and what maybe like a positive, like here's what you're doing that's really helping us, and being like real positive about it, because it could probably be very intimidating. You're hearing all these like negative, you know, but maybe turning it into like really positive on how they're helping the process, and maybe, you know, kind of like indirectly offering suggestions on how they can help it even more, both in the home and at school.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for those contributions. And then Kathleen, I was going to ask you to add your recommendations into the chat box for everybody, if you wouldn't mind. And then Tina, would you provide your recommendations?
Sure, verbally or via chat?
Verbally.
Okay, I'm going to go fast. I think for the school piece, the only other follow-up that I would add there is I think sometimes a good strategy is just to model what you want without placing any demands on the school, right? So the school's already been, is maybe a little bit gun shy and already feels perhaps a little bit judged by non-compliance to previous recommendations that have been made. So rather than giving any recommendations, you might take the strategy of pulling back completely and just communicating with them. So sending them a letter once a week or once a month, just want to let you know, here's how things are going, this is what we're up to. These are the struggles we're having, this is the challenges that we face. If you guys have any suggestions for us, please let us know. And these are some of the things we found successful, but put it out there in a way that doesn't have any expectations for them to do anything with it other than just to sort of receive it. And if you model that really collaborative, positive engagement with them, then they might reciprocate. And even if they don't, they at least know that you as a service provider are willing to exchange that information with them in that supportive, non-judgmental, kid-friendly sort of way. So I would think about doing that. It's a little response effort on your part, but could go a long way. For the recommendations related to the problem behavior, I think the things that you probably already picked up are repeat that preference assessment. I probably do a full repeat of preference assessment, MSWO, or some other variety across different items, whether it be toys or activities, foods, drinks, that kind of thing. And then I would do a repeat mini preference assessment every week or at the start of every session, do a 3-item mini array. It's quick, it's easy, and I think that you've got some motivational issues here and that could really support you. I like what somebody had said in the chat, and I think that they're spot on. I think we always, want to not make assumptions about function, and even though you have a little FA data to support escape and attention, you might want to just check in on that and make sure we haven't seen function shift or that we have a clear sense of what the primary controlling function is. If you do get data to indicate that the function is escape, I'm putting, if I can, let's see if this works, in the chat. I just put a link to an article that I think is a really great resource if you're not familiar with it. It's an article by Kanine Geiger, Jim Carr, Linda LeBlanc, and it walks you through a decision-making model for picking interventions for escape, maintain problem behavior. And I think it touches on a lot of the things that people ask questions about, sort of, what is it that's aversive about the task? Do we need to do some sort of curricular revision? Do we have the right level of reinforcement in place? Those kinds of things. So it's a great read, and just going through the questions posted in that article may land you on an intervention that does the trick. Okay. And then, I think there's no rule that kids with autism have to learn while sitting at a table doing discrete trial. And you've got some good evidence that this kid is right where you want him for learning in naturalistic context. And so think about how you can really capitalize on that. And if you've got to shift those targets into naturalistic teaching and away from the table to enhance motivation, do it, right? We don't have to do DTT work. We don't have to do it at a table. So think about that for sure. And then just watch that schedule of reinforcement if you are doing discrete trial, and consider the nature of the target that you're working on rather than the context in which you're teaching to determine what your schedule is. And you may find that modifying your schedule of reinforcement based on target and where you are in acquisition could really, again, enhance that motivation piece. So I know that was fast and furious, but those are my recs for you. And I'm happy to follow up after the clinic if we need more time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those recommendations. And I see we have quite a few that have been coming through as well. My recommendations would have aligned pretty much exactly with Tina's. So I'm going to go ahead and actually move on to introduce our guest speaker that we have today. And we have Dr. Joe Lambert joining us today. He's assistant professor of the Practice and Applied Behavior Analysis program in the Department of Special Education at Vanderbilt University. He received his PhD in Disability Disciplines from Utah State University with an emphasis in applied behavior analysis, and he's a doctoral level board certified behavior analyst. His areas of expertise include FA methodology, function-based interventions, and environmental factors that influence the maintenance of these interventions. So he is going to be presenting to us today. He just joined us. I see him here. And Joe, please feel free to share your PowerPoint presentation, and we are looking forward to your presentation today. And I will unmute you as well, if I can find the button.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. Thank you. Sorry about that.
So I'm going to try and share my screen with you. And it's not allowing me to. Hopefully it will now.
We can see your screen.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to present to you all very, very briefly some research that I think that could potentially be relevant to the assessment and treatment of problem behavior for you all. I'm very much invested in taking the research base and making it accessible to practitioners and clinicians. And so you've got all of this data that suggests that FA methodology is essential, well, not essential, but it's helpful to design effective intervention. And then we've got other research suggesting that although everybody agrees that FA methodologies are important and experimentation is important, most people don't engage in FA or conduct FAs in their actual practice. And there's a plethora of reasons for that. So I'm in a special education department, so I'm very much invested in figuring out how to get this technology into the hands of teachers and other practitioners. And so today's title is Latency-Based FA as Baseline for Subsequent Treatment Evaluation. And my presentation style can be a little bit different. I believe in observational learning, and we had the opportunity, the fortune to collect video samples of various stages of assessment and intervention for the person whose data are published in this study with voiceover narrative. And so I'm going to very briefly present to you all some rationale and logic for why we did what we did, and then I'm going to allow them to take you through the case, and then I'll answer questions as they come up. Does that work?
Excellent. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I see two pre-intervention activities as being highly, highly important. One of them is functional analysis and the other one is baseline data. And there's some precedence in the literature to kind of marry these two activities into a single activity. So you conduct an FA and then use the FA data as baseline from which to evaluate subsequent treatment interventions. And I think that people might argue that using FA data as baseline data is a valid approach to treatment evaluation because in the FA you're getting a sample of problem behavior in the presence of specific EOs and SDs prior to intervention. So basically, worst case scenario, we assume that this problem behavior is being reinforced in the natural environment. We also assume that it's this specific consequence that's evaluate whether or not that's the case. And if it is the case, then we've got some evidence that when the contingencies are placed on this problem behavior, we're going to get about this much problem behavior in this fixed unit of time. And then during intervention, you get a sample of problem behavior following each successive exposure to a fixed temporal unit of therapy. So let's say you're using extinction plus differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. Then after 5 minutes of exposure, your rate might increase because you're hitting a burst. And then it might, after 10 minutes, then it's coming back down. After 15 minutes, problem behavior is down, and now you're starting to see the emergence of MANS, for instance. So basically, you get like this progressive evaluation of progress, and it allows you to make decisions. Is this working? Is this not working? So I like using FAs as baseline for a number of reasons. One, it increases efficiency of service delivery. Even though many people agree that FAs are important, and even though many people agree that that baseline is important, when you're presenting these activities to stakeholders who aren't necessarily well versed in the scientific method, it's really hard to justify to them why you're exposing their child to counter-therapeutic contingencies. So when anytime you can get data from both of these kind of like pre-intervention analyses reduced, and that's good, or like with reduced effort or with reduced exposure to counter-therapeutic contingencies, from my experience, that's a good thing. Then you don't have to waste so much of your buy-in for FA, and you can get into intervention faster. It makes everybody happier. So the traditional FA, the Iwata protocol, is fantastic. It's been researched. It's awesome. but there may be circumstances under which it's not a good idea. One of them has to do with just the resources required to conduct an FA. If you're doing rate-based measures, then you basically have to collect data on every single instance of problem behavior within some fixed unit of time. And so you could see one instance of challenging behavior, you could see 150 instances of challenging behavior, because behavior doesn't really start or stop a session. So if you're seeing a lot of challenging behavior in a session, then it's highly unlikely that you can collect your own data. So in order to conduct an FA, you need a controlled environment, and you probably also need at least one other person to collect data for you. Another issue with traditional FAs is something that I just alluded to, is that challenging behavior doesn't end the analysis, and so you can see a whole lot of it. And if you're dealing with highly dangerous challenging behavior, then you may not want to conduct a traditional FA just because the kid is hurting himself, or he's hurting other people, or he's destroying your house, and you just don't want that to happen. So there are a lot of different variations of traditional FA methodology that are more accessible. They address various needs, and one variation that kind of addresses the two needs that I just mentioned is the latency-based FA. And it's a relatively understudied assessment. It's relatively new, but all the information we have on it suggests that it's both accurate and requires very little problem behavior, just a pittance or a small fraction of what you would see during a traditional FA. And that's because the dependent variable is latency to the first response, the first instance of challenging behavior. As soon as you see the first instance, you deliver a programmed consequence, and then you terminate the trial. So this is just a visual representation of that. Let's just say that our challenging behavior is attention, or is attention maintained, or we suspect that it's attention maintained. And so when I present my establishing operation, what I'm doing in essence, in layman's terms, what I'm doing is I'm making attention important as a consequence. And I'm making behavior that has historically produced attention more likely to occur. So I'm not going to present that establishing operation until I'm ready to collect my data. But as soon as I do, I'll ignore the child, which is the EO for attention, and I'll simultaneously start my timer. And then the assumption is throughout the entire session, this child is being exposed to this establishing operation continuously. And what we care about is how much exposure to the establishing operation is required before we see this first instance of challenging behavior. So in this graphic, at 135 seconds, we see target response. We reinforce it, we terminate the trial, and we collect our data, and that's our first data point, is the latency to the first instance of challenging behavior. So I love this assessment because you can see less challenging behavior with it, but one of the things that I'm coming into contact with is now I can't do my other favorite thing, which is combine FA outcomes and baseline outcomes. And so, and that's because typically when I conduct an intervention, I like to use rate-based measures. And that's historically what's done in the literature. And so it's not valid to evaluate latency to response in your baseline, compare latency to response to your baseline to rate of responding during intervention. So that's one challenge to using latency-based measures as intervention, as baseline for intervention. Another challenge is that during the latency-based FA, problem behavior ends the trial, and so there's really nothing that specifies what happens after the trial ends. And so there's two issues with that. First of all, if you have to start a new trial every single time an instance of challenging behavior occurs, and there's a lot of challenging behavior, or there's a lot of manding, then in like an hour-long session, you may have 100 or 200 trials, and you're collecting data on every single instance. At that point, why not just collect rate-based data to begin with? So that's one challenge. That's one issue with latency-based measures if it's in a trial-based format. It's just it drastically reduces the efficiency of the data collection system. And it also complicates therapy. So if all program contingencies end after the first instance of some targeted response, then what happens after that? Like, do we start another trial, or do I do some sort of abolishing operation until I don't see challenging behavior anymore? And when you're using something like extinction, it's not that you can't use it, it's just that like more parameters for success need to be embedded than what is currently provided in the literature and how to do that. And so a question we had was, let's go ahead and switch. So let me state this differently. What I don't like, I like the approach to intervention where I'm taking a sample of data after fixed units of therapy to evaluate progress across time. And so I think our question was, will latency-based samples of behavior tell us the same story as rate-based samples of behavior following each fixed unit of time. And so just really quickly, what I mean is, like, we got to fix now, instead of trial-based, we're just saying 300 seconds, we're going to do 5-minute sessions, we're going to check in on latency. So we present our EO, when does problem behavior happen? When does the first demand happen? When does compliance happen? And hopefully across time, hopefully latencies to problem behavior increase, and hopefully eventually go away altogether. And maybe latencies to compliance decrease, and latencies to demands decrease. So those might be reasonable goals. So in a nutshell, you guys can go ahead and read the study if you want. It's been published last year. But in a nutshell, we think we've got some evidence to suggest that latency-based measures of treatment progress are valid, and therefore you might be able to use a trial-based or latency-based FA data as baseline if you go with the latency-based treatment evaluation format. So just to recap, I promise this is all, I'm rushing, and I'm so sorry about that, but I think that you're going to get a better sense of what I'm talking about in just a little bit here. But just some potential advantages of using latency-based FA as baseline, kind of like I mentioned before. Problem behavior in a latency-based FA is going to probably happen less frequently than problem behavior in a traditional FA. You may not need to conduct, or you wouldn't need to conduct baseline data after the fact, and it's a low-effort system. I haven't published these data yet, but we have completed the data set, and so we will hopefully be submitting for publication soon. We had teachers conduct latency-based FAs while collecting their own data through both through the FA and through intervention. And so this is something that one person can do. It requires some organization, but most phones these days have timer apps with a lap function, and with that lap function brings with it the possibility to track multiple latencies simultaneously and also track session duration. So it's a nice little thing to use. And again, I'll answer questions if there's time after the fact. And so I've included experimental details, at least a few of them, for people who aren't here right now or who want to follow up afterwards. And you can go ahead and access these slides, I believe. And I'll just ask Echo to not post what I'm showing next. I really, really appreciate the guardian of this child and also this child's privacy, or their willingness to share their story with us in the service of the greater good. And so so please stop recording now, or whatever it is that you're doing. So a little bit of background information. This little girl, she engaged in really severe aggression, and we suspected an escape function, but her aggression was so severe that she actually hadn't left her house during the 3 months prior to the initiation of our consult. And she had to be discharged from school. She was being homeschooled because she wouldn't go to school. Her mom actually had to quit her job and live with her full time because she couldn't leave the house. Also, visitors couldn't come in. Anytime a visitor came, whether it was a friend of the family or even family, she would engage in aggression until that person left. And so this child's world had been severely limited because of her challenging behavior. And so our primary goal was to get her to tolerate a little establishing operation, get her to deal with being in the presence of things that would make her establishing operations that would make her want to escape from a context. And then generalize that initially in the house, but then eventually to various places in the community, and ultimately in our clinic, which is almost the inverse of what we usually do, to kind of recreate an academic context in preparation for getting her back into school. So I've already said a lot, and it probably doesn't mean much. Here we go.
I believe that we just started recording again, and so those that are watching this, we did have one portion that showed a specific client, and so we will not have that present on our website. Joe, that was wonderful. Thank you again. And with your permission, we can also provide your email address if anybody had any follow-up questions, and I would love to get a copy of the article, and we can submit that too, and the recommendations as well.
Sure.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And take Joe up on his offer to meet up with him at APA-I or APBA. He would love it.
See you guys later.
Thanks, Joe. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So we have about 25 minutes left, and we are going to spend the remainder of the clinic finishing up on the case recommendations that we were not able to complete with Sarah Brunswick's case 2 weeks ago. So Sarah, we are going to just really quickly, briefly review the case to refresh everybody's memory, as well as to just provide some information for folks that were not able to join us at the last clinic. Following that, we will actually then move into the hub panelist questions. That's where we ended last time, and then move right into the recommendations. I love the chat box, and so the recommendations coming in through the chat box have been excellent. Please continue to share in that window so that we can include those in the end as well. So I'm just going to provide a brief summary, and then Sarah, let me know if I forgot anything from the previous presentation. But you had presented on a 5-year-old child diagnosed with autism who had been receiving ABA treatment for approximately a year for about 10 hours per week. The primary area of concern that you came to ECHO to present on were some challenges with language. Specifically, there were some difficulties with acquiring interverbal repertoire for answering personal questions within a safety program. You had implemented text fading, textual prompts, and were having difficulty fading those textual prompts. Also, there were reports of difficulty acquiring spontaneous language, and that he was engaging in high levels of scripted language and play that was interfering in his sessions as well. And parents have an area of concern with him speaking in the third person. There were also some treatment barriers and just environmental variables that we had discussed that included financial barriers for the parent and unable to provide some of the materials for treatment. And there were some language barriers as well that were brought up. Specifically, the parent that is home does not speak English and will often stay in the office during sessions, and the father will also, when he gets home, retire to the office as well. And so we haven't had a lot of parent involvement in communication. And also, it has been difficult to incorporate parent participation due to other young children that they have in their family as well. So did I summarize everything correctly, or is there anything that I left out?
No, that was a great summary. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So I know last time we did not get to any of the panelists' questions. Zoe, you had quite a few that we talked about after that I thought were excellent, and so I was hoping that you could start first.
So forgive me, it feels like a century has passed between our last
I know.
I think that we had talked quite a bit after the last conference about how to improve this, and so forgive me for not being as mindful and exact as I'd like to be. So I think the questions that I had were very much around sort of what was going on outside of the therapy, that there were lots of concerns about the toys had been put away, that there weren't a lot of access. I think he had trains, and there was one other thing that you guys could do, and that play was something that the family wanted. I think the dad was asking that he could do more things, have more of a variety of things that he could play with or do. And then in addition, like the furniture was being torn up, and there were just a lot of things that the family was expressing that were very challenging to them throughout their day. And so one of the questions that I had for you was, have there been any conversations around that, or any thoughts about incorporating some of those challenging behaviors into the therapy sessions?
Yeah, the family was concerned about his limited interest, and so we introduced an expanding interest program, and I'm happy to say that Jenga blocks was one of the toys that are readily available, and he is now, the technician's been working hard on it, and he is now playing Jenga the way it's intended, because he was constantly building bridges. He really loves London bridges, and so he was always just building bridges with them. So he's playing with Jenga, and we just started a home safety program, and Dad said one of the safety issues is that he climbs all over the kitchen and takes the burners off the stove. He will climb up high on top of the refrigerator. So we just started that program. And other than that, we always try to work on incorporating sister. And the technician says she's seeing gradual improvements in that area.
Great. Have you all sort of thought about ways that you might be able to package the toys and practice on taking things out and playing with them and putting them away, so everything doesn't have to be in the I guess it's a garage, right?
Yeah.
And I know that you had expressed that the technician that's in there kind of feels a little awkward about addressing that directly with the family, that they don't really feel like that's comfortable. And so I thought, I wondered if anything, just in terms of your interactions with the family, if that was something that you had tried any strategies around.
Just one phone conversation that I had with Dad where we talked about expanding interest. Maybe we could get like 5 toys, because right now we have a train and Jenga blocks that are readily available. So I said 5 toys would be really nice, and he said that would be no problem. I think right now we have no problem or issue storing all of our program materials in a tote, and it's kept in the office, which I think is really, but actually the technician said she's still just seeing 2 toys, so I need to follow up with Dad and ask if we could just get 3 additional toys to have a little more variety, because I think we've shown success with Jenga, and so hopefully I can highlight that and just say thank you so much for bringing Jenga out. We've been able to gradually get him to play with that longer in the way it's intended to be played with. So I'm hoping to touch base with Dad again and say, could we get 3 more toys just to add some variety? I just picked 5 randomly, but small toys that could be stored in our tote, I think, would be secure enough to, and he seemed fine with that. So I think there is just a awkward communication barrier. We don't see him a lot. When he does get home before the session's over, I usually get a chance to talk to him briefly, but.
And has there been, one final question, has there been any parent training piece? Is that part of the...
Yeah, just a couple. I wouldn't say it's been consistent, unfortunately. We had 2 in person where Dad saw a PowerPoint slide about play skills, and then we right away went into modeling how to play with him, and Dad sat in, but it increased challenging behaviors in the form of elopement and hysterical laughing, and I think Dad was very good at following our behavior plan, which was planned ignoring, but he kind of felt like, I'm just making things worse. And so our parent meetings quickly shifted to monthly phone conversations where I update him on treatment goals, how we're achieving those treatment goals. He seems very pleased with the programs we're targeting, but his involvement's decreased drastically, unfortunately.
That's great. Again, I think that it's a challenging situation, so I think you all are doing a wonderful, wonderful job.
Thanks.
I will pass it on to the next panelist. I don't know if it's going to be who it's going to be, but thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you. Sarah, did you have any follow-up questions?
Sorry, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I know that I believe last time you said that he has a great relationship with his sister, or they get along pretty good.
No, they get along very bad.
Oh, okay.
Because they are, all weekend long, they are kept away from each other because they are, they can so quickly spiral into aggression and yelling. And so Dad has said it's just awful on the weekends. So usually one parent was with one kid and one is with the other in separate rooms, doors shut.
Okay, and I think I recall you saying that she stays in the office with the family. I was just curious to see if possibly you can approach it like as a team thing, like a team approach to where everybody understands their role and how they can help their brother and how it can help the relationship with the sister. I don't think we're giving recommendations right now, but that would just be my my suggestion based on the not getting along with the sister and then the dad kind of being in the office or the mom being in the office. Maybe just, you know, identifying their roles and how each one of them plays a huge impact in his success and everything else.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. Thank you. And Kathleen, are you still on the line too?
I am, and I do not have any additional questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And Tina.
Hi there. I actually did get to ask questions last time, and I think I remember the answers to most of them. I guess the only follow-up question, is there anything that's changed with regards to, in the last couple of weeks, with regards to the prompt dependence on fading of the textual prompt?
No, unfortunately, I just saw a session note from session last night, and the BT said that he was having even more trouble rotating between targets, specifically with pronouns. She said he was constantly defaulting to he does when he's already mastered she does, they do, he does. But when rotating those, she said he was always defaulting to he does.
Okay.
And that was supposed to be a 6-week maintenance check, and I just saw the data plummeted to zeros. So
okay,
that was discouraging.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. I didn't have any other follow-up.
Great, thanks.
Okay, perfect. And then I just had a couple of questions too. It is a little difficult coming back to it after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot longer than 2 weeks. So currently, how many textual scripts does he have? Do you currently have incorporated within his program?
Do you think across programs, or do you want like per target?
Maybe across programs first.
I'm sorry, I had his learning tree up and it closed because I was inactive. If I just quickly scan across his expressive programs here real quick.
More than 5, sir?
Yeah, you can see my hands counting more than 5.
Okay, great.
It might be like 6.
Okay. Well, I was just asking because I'm trying to get a better idea of how many textual-based scripts you have in place, and where my next question was going to be where he is at with the fading process. So last time we talked, we're fading backwards, and so I know that you mentioned that he's faded back to the first letter of the script. Has that been across all of the scripts at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do any of the scripts have the same first letter?
I don't know that we've ran into that problem, but that's a really good point. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, well, that was a great question.
Yeah, something to definitely think about, yeah.
And then my other question too is when we're asking the questions, I know that that we're not able to fade these scripts, but is he responding with an incorrect script from another question that you already have in place, another script that you have in place?
He doesn't err across programs. He errors within programs. And so I think pronouns, he'll err within pronouns, if that makes sense, but he won't err and default to something like a personal information question.
Okay, and then so you have scripts and pronouns and also within interverbal safety questions?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And is there any other program?
Yep. We have a statement that has a textual prompt, and we have a interverbal play fill-in phrases that's using a textual prompt as well. We also are trying to teach him to man for negative reinforcement around his sister in particular during their interactions, and those are written out. And he has a play phrase fill-ins.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Yeah.
All right. So we have 10 minutes left, and we did have some of the recommendations come through last time. So just to briefly summarize, we had recommendations that were related to school coordination and trying to identify whether the family had a healthcare plan that would cover the cost for translation services since the mother has primary language. Was it Vietnamese?
She's from the Philippines, so
okay.
Positive.
And so we haven't been able to communicate effectively with one of the primary caregivers, and then also related to financial barriers, the Airman's Attic. Which is because they are a military family, it's an opportunity for military families that have a rank of a certain rank of E5 or below, and then they're able to go and access materials, toys, clothes, etc. At no cost. So those are some of the preliminary recommendations that we had come through. Zoe, do you want to go ahead and start rounding out those recommendations?
Sure. I'm a social worker, and so the sort of the looking at how children learn within the context of the family is kind of a core piece of how I approach my work. And so when I hear about the family, it sounds like the family is just really, really struggling, right? Mm-hmm. They're struggling in terms of they have 2 kids that have extremely, that are challenging. They're boys climbing all over the stove, and there's safety risks, and they fight and are aggressive with each other to the point they have to separate them. And so it's an environment that is really not conducive to a whole lot of learning and a whole lot of joy. I wonder how the parents are feeling about being parents. And so I wonder, I guess my recommendation would be to put some thought into, and again, I don't know whether this goes into the plan or, kind of how that becomes contextualized and part of the learning. But I think that it's going to be very difficult to generalize any of these skills that he's learning in the context of therapy without getting some of these environmental pieces under control and giving them families and skills. So I know that's a very general recommendation and not a whole lot of specifics. Going back to the team and kind of saying like, okay, which one of these are we going to target? What's going to make the biggest impact, right? Yeah. So maybe it is a home safety plan, but maybe it's just like, how do we get the parents to play with the kids and kind of have some joy? So anyway, I think that's my biggest one. I hear about dad saying like, whoa, he just gets so silly, and I'm not able to, like, I can't help him learn, right? Every time he kind of gets into that he falls apart, right? And gets kind of and goes into hysterical laughing. And as a therapist, I think like, oh, like, how are they implementing anything that you guys are doing? Yeah, right. So anyway, that I think would be my biggest sort of overall recommendation. I can't remember exactly what was going on at school, so forgive me in terms of the coordination with that. Was this also the family that had said that they had respite, but then wasn't really clear? What?
No, that was a different one. But the school coordination was that there was none. But there luckily was a parent-teacher meeting last week, and I was able to attend by speakerphone. So I've at least got. We're going to move forward with communication, at least just through email, just keeping in touch with the teacher, because they had very similar concerns to what we already do in the home program too. So
Right. Well, good for you. That's a big step in the right direction. So, anyway, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you. Okay, Kathleen, would you like to go next?
Sure. I just had a brief update. Hi, Sarah. This is Kathleen from Oakland. And I wanted to let you know that after the recommendation that was presented last week to look into translation services that would be covered under the health plan, we have had our health insurance specialists reach out to the health plan to start to navigate those benefits. That's still in process. Great. And once that's complete, we'll give you an update, and then we'll also share, if we are successful, we'll share the steps that we took to accomplish that.
Wonderful. That would be a huge help. That's, definitely an area I don't know much about.
Excellent. And that's all I had.
Great. Thank you. And our clinic coordinators tell me we have 5 minutes left. So Sarah, do you have any comments that you would like to add as well?
No, I think that, I think I said them in the last time.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Tina. This is a lot of time for you.
5 minutes. I don't know. Yeah, but you've got to go as well. So I'll try to keep it brief. And all of my recommendations should be taken with a grain of salt because my memory is also a little shaky from 2 weeks back and I lost my notes. But I completely agree with Zoe. I think that it's certainly fundamental to put some programs in place. I do think that it's great for them to be systematically built into the intervention plan for this kiddo. Things related to increase of functional play and increase of pretend play with just consideration of involvement of the parents and specifically the sibling as well, just to balance out the dynamics that exist at home. I think that that's great. And you guys have already started that to some degree, right, with Jenga and some of the other things that you're doing. So I love that. And I think the only other recommendation that I might pose for possibly impacting parental buy-in is I think sometimes people think about toys as being things you play with for play. But at this age and at this point in his developmental level, access to toys and manipulatives is not just for play, but is for fundamental learning that goes beyond just play, leisure. It really is for enhancement of problem solving and fine motor skills and an assortment of other things. And so you might just think in the way in which you talk about access to increased access to toys as really necessary for his learning, not just for his sort of social and leisure growth. So think about that. And then for pretend play, I know that, and again, this may be a null recommendation at this point, we had that issue with the Curious George play, and part of that stemmed from wanting him to have a way to engage in play that didn't require manipulatives. But just as a side recommendation, just consider some other forms of symbolic play and sort of the sequence of symbolic play development and think about what may be appropriate for him if you guys go back to that as a goal. There was some rigidity around the way he was engaging in the role play of Curious George, but other forms of symbolic play, so object substitution pretense and those kinds of things could be really cool and involve things like using a toilet tissue holder as an airplane, right? And that kind of pretend play could be great for him because it may not as directly link to some of the rigidity that he has around preferred items or characters, and it may also allow him to increase use of objects that he has more freely in his environment rather than traditional toys. So there may be a nice marrying there depending on the form of pretend play that you choose to target. So just a consideration.
I love that.
And then for and I know that there was something tricky about the way you guys were targeting the pronoun issue for him, and I can't remember exactly what it was last week, but I think I remember the thought I had 2 weeks ago was to try to shift it into game play if possible. So if you're working with a ball, throw it to him, throw it to her, throw it to me. And if you do that, you can always the nice things about those types of games is that it incorporates the target, it's naturalistic, it'll get the play happening, and that you can change the pace of the game to target fluency, which I think is also, and just nice discrimination, sort of rapid discrimination. So think about that. And then for the prompt dependence piece, I vaguely remember last time you saying something, and I asked about, have you guys considered using echoic prompts? And I think that there was a statement about, we're worried that he might echo. And I think that's exactly what you want, though, right? That's an echoic prompt. And so there may be other reasons not to use echoic prompts for him, but it may also be worthwhile to pull back a couple of the targets, switch out the prompts that you're using, just to see. I fully appreciate a strong rationale for using textual prompts, especially because he's got some good reading skills and some other things in place that support that. But given the problem that you're having with the prompt dependency and sort of the fading, think about that. And then the last thing that I'll say is just, you had mentioned seeing that data and feeling really disappointed about things not looking as great for maintenance as you'd hope. And just go back to the way, and I don't know what your program says, but just think critically about the way you're writing in your criterion for mastery before something goes into maintenance. And do you have something there that really makes you feel solid about the discrimination and solid about the fluency and solid about the way he's not only using it in the context of discrete trial, but how that acquisition and discrete trial has really transferred into natural context, and then you go into maintenance, right? So think about those pieces. So I know that's a lot, But I'm trying to move
Thank
fast,
you.
and we're already out of time. And Joy, I'm sorry. I stole all your time.
No, that's okay. I'll be really quick and I'll put most of mine in writing as well. But Sarah, just nice job over the last 2 weeks incorporating the preliminary recommendations that were already provided to you. And one of the things that's been great is that we've been receiving feedback from our other participants that have indicated that they are making personal goals for themselves to coordinate care across these other providers where it's traditionally been a challenge. And so it's been really nice to get that feedback and see that. So really quickly, I just wanted to mention that we will include, I will include some information on some literature for textual prompts and potentially transferring stimulus control from the text prompt to the stimulus that is in the environment that we want to be controlling the response as well. I would recommend following Tina's recommendations to pull back on maybe some of the programs. It does seem like we have quite a few, and if we're having challenges, looking at his acquisition and our ability to be able to feed back and get some independent responding across those programs and determine maybe how he's responding as well. So maybe looking at both of those, and also trying to determine too, I know that you had mentioned that he is, with his listener discrimination skills, he is not responding correctly to some of the safety questions that we have as well. And so my question to you, something to think about, is whether we're seeing that difficulty with discrimination across other programs as well, so following directions, etc. And if so, then potentially putting in a program to specifically target that, where we might use the same stimuli within the program but provide different instructions. So roll car, crash car, so that he's not just looking at a stimulus, but he's having to attend to the vocal prompt as well.
I like that.
So we will put all of that, as well as a couple other things that are going to be easier to follow within the written recommendations that will be followed up. All of that will be put into Box, the link that you all received by Monday, and then you will receive a CEU survey that will come to your inbox, and that will then allow you to complete the form and get your CEU certificate as well. Those of you that participated last time, all CEU certificates are being emailed the day before the next clinic. So you receive that within 2 weeks of the previous clinic. We finally, last thing, we are looking for additional case presentations. So if you have a case that you would like to present for a consultation, please submit. You can find all the information on our website, and Haley will include that in the chat box. Or if you have a case that's been particularly challenging and you've been able to coordinate care and identify some treatment options and it's worked really well, and you would like to share that data with everybody, we would love to have some great examples as well. So whatever you feel more comfortable with, we would like to encourage everybody to please submit a case. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be meeting again in 2 weeks, and we appreciate everybody that joined us today.
Yes, thank you everyone for your help.
All right. Enjoy